Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a recent wrap-up. The first one would be Queen of Blood by Sarah Beth Durst. This is the first book to an adult fantasy trilogy. I do see this sometimes considered young adult by some people. I know some of you kind of like to go back and forth between the two age ranges, and I know some people don't, so I just kind of wanted to make clear that this might be a good in-between. I did very much enjoy this book, however, my tastes generally, I prefer character-driven stories, and this to me felt very plot-driven. It's this forest world, people live in this forest, they live among the treetops, their entire civilization functions with the forest and the spirits, which are these forest-like creatures. Sometimes they look human-like, sometimes they look plant-like, sometimes they look animal-like, but these creatures keep the forest functioning, and that allows people to live in the forest. However, these spirits have two basic instincts, which is to help create, which is what they do in helping the forest function, and to destroy, which humans destroy the forest, and they want to protect the forest, so they want to destroy humans. There's a little bit of a mystery element to this book because, almost like bees, there is a queen, a human queen, who essentially helps keep the spirits in check. The spirits aren't necessarily staying in their lane, and that's where we meet our main character. We follow her for a very large period of her life, and it's a pretty short book, so I think, again, this contributes to it feeling like a more plot-driven story. But the setting is so cool, and the mystery element is why, if the queen has the ability to make these spirits be held in check so they don't slaughter everybody, then why are there certain situations coming up where the spirits aren't really doing what they're supposed to? Is the queen good? Is she bad? What's going on with that? Overall, like I said, I think it's a great transition from young adult into adult. If you like adult fantasy and you want a really cool setting, especially a forest setting, this one is good for that. I have already pre-recorded my very in-depth book review that will be non-spoiler for that, so you'll get more details if that sounds interesting to you. But the other one that I have done a video for, is pre-recorded and it's coming up very soon, would be for Deadhouse Gates, which is the second book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series by Steven Erikson. The first book, pretty much the fandom agrees, is nowhere close in quality to the next installments, and I was looking forward to that being true, and I definitely wouldn't say that Deadhouse Gates was worse than the first one. I was gripped at times, but ultimately the style of Malazan, after reading both the first and the second, I can just tell is not for me. And so the review is going to be kind of hopefully letting you know if it seems like something that you would like. You kind of uncover things as you're going through it, and I think he purposefully withholds certain information. He has built such a fleshed out world to the point where he has the history of everything, I feel, so ingrained in his mind, and then he has it in the book, but he also kind of uses characters, in my opinion, as devices for themes rather than devices for just, and rather than just not being devices. Like, I just want characters to be characters, and I want to see their thoughts and their feelings and their motivations and all those sorts of things, whereas I feel that Malazan, it's more about this person within this world, and you kind of get to know the world through them. You get to know these bigger, more almost literary-esque themes, and I just prefer so much more of an intimate examination of characters and their backstories, their lives, them moving forward. I prefer that so much more. I like world building, but I want the world building to come second to the characters, and I wouldn't even say the story feels plot driven, because in a lot of ways there isn't really a plot in a lot of ways. The review, I'll give specific examples that I think better illustrate what I'm trying to convey than I'm actually capable of conveying. The rest of these books I will not have dedicated reviews for, so these are going to be mini reviews for them. And the first one would be Forest of Souls. Again, kind of has a creepy forest setting, but this particular book, it follows a main character, of course it follows a main character, it follows a girl who is the apprentice to this woman, and she is training to become this thief, spy, assassin type character, but some things go wrong, and her best friend, she dies. It's not a spoiler, it's like in the synopsis of the book. And then our main character somehow ends up bringing her back to life, and then all of a sudden it's like, what? I didn't know I could do that. But also people who use magic in this world get kicked out of the country or killed or put in prison. So she ends up heading over to this creepy forest area, and there's a lot of intrigue, and there were so many things that I kept waiting for them to come together because there are a lot of pieces presented. And I actually felt like for a young adult book, it did dive into the world building maybe more than you generally would expect from a young adult fantasy story. However, I do feel like the book maybe would have benefited from it not... It's the first book in a series, so there's going to be more, but I think that first book could have been split up and we could have spent so much more time with certain aspects because the world building was really cool. The setting was really cool, and I wanted to get more of the character with her best friend and their friendship because you do get pieces of it. These two girls clearly care very much for each other, and I know a lot of other people are definitely wanting more friendships in fantasy stories. However, I felt like the friendship, you just kind of know it exists and you see them interact, but you really don't know very much. You know some things about her friend as far as her status, but I feel like her hobbies, her likes, her personality, a lot of those things, I didn't get as much of, which made the friendship almost feel kind of one-sided because you only follow the main character and you're only in her head. So I would have liked their friendship to be fleshed out more. I think we could have spent more time with some of the events that were presented. I ended up coming out of the book not really disliking it or liking it because so many things were presented that I was like, I can't wait to learn about those things and to spend time with those things. And either those things took a backseat and will probably come back later, or they just kind of, we finished talking about those things. So I felt very lukewarm about the book. I still think if it sounds interesting to you, maybe give it a go because there are a lot of elements that I thought were pretty fascinating. Next up, we have Slay by Brittany Morris. It's a YA contemporary, but it tackles a lot of themes with race. And so we are following a main character, and she is Black, and she's living in America, and she is a secret game developer. Now, one thing, I don't know anything about game developing, but I do think that if you go into it and you have any kind of experience or knowledge of this particular subject, I would recommend that you go into this not expecting it to be super, super realistic, because I don't know that it was super, super realistic when it comes to that element of the story, but that's so obviously not the focus of the book. The focus of the book is that this game that she has developed, she kind of accidentally created a safe place for Black gamers, and this game is all about celebrating being Black, and it's this really cool kind of fantastical world, and you duel people, and there's cards. The game sounded super awesome and really, really fun, but something ends up happening in real life, and it has to do with this game, and then now there's all this media coverage of this game, and the media coverage isn't exactly positive. So now this girl who just always had this wonderful little secret that was hers, this is being put out into the world, and everybody, one, expects her to come forward and to have something to say, to take all the responsibility, essentially. And she was just a girl who liked playing this game and finding a place where she felt safe. Because the gaming community, I love video games. And yeah, it can be really disgusting. So those elements of the story, the sense of self, the sense of finding yourself within something kind of nerdy, finding other people who relate to you, kind of like BookTube, that element of the story I thought was so well done. The game sounded so fun. And I think my favorite part of the book was that we don't actually only follow the main character. We also get other characters around the world because this is a game that is accessible online. You see people of different ages. You see people from these different countries who have experiences that are very different from one place to the next. I just thought those elements, the nuances, I thought were done really well. The only thing is it is young. I mean, it's young adult, but it felt somewhat young. The main character's young, she has a boyfriend in the book, and sometimes I was like, ugh, as far as the way the teenagers talk to each other. It is young, and I think that it's a fantastic way for somebody to be introduced to some of the conversations that are had in the story. I thought it was a fun story overall, despite the fact that it does tackle some really intense stuff. However, the youthfulness of it does, I think it prevents it from being able to go maybe as deep and maybe as dark as other books that tackle really serious topics do. That's not to say that it doesn't have a lot of heart, and that doesn't say that it doesn't go into those things, but it still has this kind of innocence to it, in a sense, in some regards. Ultimately, I quite enjoyed it. I enjoyed the nuances of everything. I enjoyed that the author was able to tackle some really heavy things without getting really heavy. I do enjoy me some heavy emotional stuff, but you know, we need a little mix every now and then, and I think this one definitely presents the heaviness with hopefulness as well. The last book on this list I have mentioned a couple of times in previous videos, but I've not done really a formal mini review for it. So that book would be Girls of Paper and Fire. Like Slay, this also tackles some pretty intense things. However, I do think this gets darker than I even was anticipating. We follow a girl in a fantasy world. There are 3 different castes, and humans are the bottom, and these other 2 castes, they have almost animal-like qualities to them, and the ones with the most animal-like qualities are seen as being the most favored, and so these particular individuals have the most power, and they also just have power in general physically a lot of the times because of their animal characteristics. Humans are pretty looked down upon, but to keep the peace with the people and to prove that, oh yeah, we're totally down to get along with you guys, their solution, the upper class, is to have a king who's like, I'll marry a bunch of human girls to show that I'm cool with you guys. And these girls, most of the time, their families hope that their daughters are chosen because it means they have status, it means they have comfort, it means that their daughter will live a decent life, because life isn't necessarily great for people. Decent minus the whole, consent thing, but we'll just skip that part. But we have our main character who absolutely does not want to be chosen. Her family doesn't want her to be chosen. She has no intention of being groomed for this, but she has these mysterious, beautiful eyes, and they kind of mark her as strange because humans don't really have gold eyes the way this girl does. So they're like, you must have something to you that's just so fascinating. And they take her, and she doesn't want to be there, but she has to be there, and she's now being like married to this king with all these other young girls. Young ladies. Young girls makes them sound like they're kids. They're not kids, but they're very young. It's still really icky and gross. And within this story, the main character ends up falling for one of the other girls. I was certainly gripped at the beginning of the story, and for a lot of the story, I felt for the character, but I think that there was a strange combination of fantastical elements that I wanted to know more of, and then the emotional sides of things that I wanted to get more into, and I just felt like we didn't have enough time to get as into those things as I would have wanted. And also the romance between the main character and one of the other ladies, that was not as dived into as I was expecting, given that it's a huge part of the synopsis and kind of the presentation. This is forbidden, so there's the forbidden love element to it, and I definitely think the angstiness and the tension and the, oh my gosh, they gotta hide and sneak around, and these feelings that she's discovering and all of that stuff, I just kind of felt like I didn't think that it was as present as I was expecting. In general, I just think the book maybe could have benefited from being a standalone and being longer, because this is an anticipated trilogy. The second one has come out, and eventually there will be a third one. And I actually just think that the fantasy stuff could have been cut down. And I love fantasy, but the ending of the first one leads you to believe there's going to be more fantasy things to occur. And I think some of the things that were going on in the background, they're going to play a bigger role, but I don't know that I got enough of them in the first book to care that much about them for future books. I really just wanted to sit more with the character, with her discovering her feelings with this other person, while also trying to overcome the terribleness that is her situation. I just thought that we could have sat in the emotional stuff more, I think, but that's my criticism of everything. I feel like I always just want to be more depressed. That's it though for my recent wrap up. I know there are probably some other books that you're wondering about that have been on some TBRs, and I have started quite a few books. You'll probably be seeing those, either reviews for those, or you'll be seeing those in future wrap-ups soon. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.